Hey guys, EST here, and we're talking about bunkers. That's right, it's finally the bunker video. Now, I didn't really want to make a video on this because it's out of the budget of most people, and I don't think I'm getting a bunker sponsor anytime soon. But everybody thinks about it, and I think everybody has in the back of their head that is like the end game if you were to come into an enormous amount of money. Like, that's the final goal of being a prepper, is just have your own complete fortress underground. But is it worth it? Well, first we got to talk about what type of bunker are you talking about? Are we talking the cheapest you can possibly do, or are we talking mid-range? You know, you get the contractors, you get the companies that build bunkers to build a bunker. The most expensive, which is like I refurbished a missile silo, come live underground with me, or the super bunkers. We're talking military. We're talking like Cheyenne Mountain. I think the Mormons got one about that size, actually. Well, let's start with the cheapest, cheap DIY, because you guys know I love me some cheap DIY on this channel. Go watch my video on how to make your own 30-year food kits for under $300. I'm not selling any kind of course or program or book or materials or kit. It's just all right there in the video. 1-hour documentary on how to do it. For free, no membership, nothing. Because that's how we do it on this channel. And actually, if that strikes a chord with you, leave a like and subscribe because there's a bunch more content. But the two that I'm familiar with as far as DIY bunker projects didn't go so well. Shocking, because it's really difficult. You could be an engineer, you could be a construction expert, and it's still going to be pretty darn difficult. So one guy got a bunch of school bus chassis because they got the domed roof and they're steel. They're meant to roll over and stuff. And let's just say they didn't stand up under the weight of the dirt. There was constant issues with oxidization, so rust. Leaks. He tried to like weld them together and seal them up into some big thing, and then they're all narrow, so it's just like living in one big snake or like one big submarine. Then another dude, at least one person, I'm sure people since then have tried, but I saw this documentary like 10 plus years ago. They tried to do it with shipping containers because those are dirt cheap. I mean, if you live near a port, you can get those things for like a couple $100. They don't want them. It costs so much to ship them back to China. It's cheaper for them to just make another one, sadly. But those, because they weren't dome-shaped, did have issues with the pressure of the dirt on them and the roof sagging. They had to add additional supports, and it just became a problem. And they had problems with leaking and infrastructure, and the electrical was going out because it was all DIY. You know, and I'm sure not a whole lot of it was to spec or to code or whatever, and then the coding people found out about it, and I think at least one or both of them had some issues. So you've got not just hours of your time, but like years of your time that you could have been spending living your life. And yeah, I like big fun projects. People like build cars over like 2 years, you know, if that's what you want to do, because it's a fun project, you get a sense of accomplishment. But with prepping stuff, I don't really see it that way. You can enjoy building the perfect gun or cleaning and maintaining all your stuff or just whatever, but at the end of the day, you need it, and you need it as quickly as possible. So stretching it out over some 5-year project and saying I'm going to do it all myself because it'll be fun and I enjoy it, well, cool, but why do you need it 5 years from now instead of right now? I'm not saying scramble out and get everything right now, you know, panic buy everything. That's just stupid. But if your plan says it's going to take this long when it could just have contractors do it in like 6 months, I don't know, man. I think you're just out there having fun. You're not trying to get to an end goal. You're just like, ooh, fun project, yay. I just don't agree with that. Also, a lot of the stuff didn't work. And with bunkers, you need reliability. You get 1 foot of water, you're in trouble. You get an electrical failure, you're in the dark. I mean, you can do redundant systems and stuff, but then if one breaks, probably another one's going to break. You know, ventilation, filtration, you kind of need that to work. A fan goes out, you ain't going down to the hardware store. So pay less to do it in more time and still get an absolutely awful product at the end? I'm not a fan. So the mid-range, you hire a contractor to do it, and they do it. They'll warranty it for X amount of years until society collapses. I've heard they range from like $40,000 on the dirt cheap side to like, well, really no upper budget, no upper boundary, I guess. You can just pay them whatever. And yeah, rich people pay them to put them in their backyard. Everything's to spec, everything's done correctly, and some of these companies have built dozens to hundreds of them. So that's how you do it. Then let's talk about the most expensive within reason, which is the rental ones usually, because nobody has the money to do this themselves. There's that one famous company. I haven't caught up with them. They're probably bankrupt by now or something. But they built a whole bunch of suites or condos or however you want to classify it, rentals, timeshares in a missile silo for ultra rich people to come to if there's going to be an event. And you got to get there. I mean, that is the big problem, is you got to get there. Hope you own a helicopter, because if there's any kind of event, you could just say, well, how many cars fit on the highway? And then there's more than that, so we're not moving. Not exactly complex geometry. And then, whoa, if you get there and they don't let you in, well, the lawsuits will fly, except all the courts and judges got incinerated by nuclear missiles. So they are under no obligation, I guess legally, morally they are, but at the end of the day, to let you in. Now, if it's just like 3 staff members, they lock everybody out, they're going to drive each other nuts. And who needs, what would that be, 500 years worth of supplies when they could just let 10 people in? And not everybody's going to get there. They know that. But their big thing is, oh, no, we'll totally let you in. I think they even give people like certain keys, but you can revoke it. Come on, I work in IT. You can do anything with anything. And if there's no recourse to them locking you out, then they'll do it. I just don't see why they wouldn't. Within reason. I'm sure the first couple people they'd let in and then seal it. But their whole sales pitch is, well, if there's going to be an election and it's contested, then come down a couple days before. If a big whatever is going to happen, then come right before. If the missiles are starting to fly, then come here right now. You want to just be right ahead of the people so that you can still travel there. But I think, going to the bunker 10 times after you bought the space there, you're going to start to feel like the boy who cried wolf, even if you're pretty based and no, that I didn't overreact. That was real. Good thing society kept going. Cool. I had a weekend off to myself. I think some people would see it that way, which is the right way to be it mindset wise, but a lot of people wouldn't. They'd be like, oh man, I'm in the bunker all the time. I look so paranoid. Oh, I don't know. And then they'd miss it. So a lot of problems with that. I wouldn't waste my money. I think almost at any price point, unless it's right down the road and unless I really trust them, I'm not wasting my money on that kind of rental. That's just stupid. I'd build my own. And yeah, theirs is better. Theirs has more infrastructure. It's better built and it has a higher budget. But I would still absolutely build my own. And in most cases, it would be a lot cheaper. Then let's talk about the super big one. So the Cheyenne Mountain Compound, the Space Defense Center and Combat Operations Center, I believe is what it's formally called. It's the one you see on Stargate SG-1, which you should go watch. Awesome show. The whole thing's built on springs so that it can survive an earthquake and a direct nuclear strike, and it's built inside of a mountain. It costs $142 million, which in today's money would be almost $1.5 billion, and I'm sure it's higher than that because they've had to put in new computers and new stuff. So it could be $5 billion at this point total cost of ownership. I mean, you got the bunker under the White House. I don't really know any specs about it, but you got allegedly one under the Denver airport. There's a couple others that are publicly known. A lot of military bases they went down with the bunkers, because you got to have somewhere to command from that's pretty safe. Now, let's say Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk want to build one of these. They still would be in a bit of a stretch to build that. Now, it would be cheaper, one, because you wouldn't use military contractors that are overpriced, and two, you don't need all the fancy tech and computers and sensors. You can put a couple computers there to play video games and some communication devices and maybe a couple cameras, drones. You're good. I mean, you can get some dirt cheap stuff compared to military computer systems, radar, all that stuff. So I think just constructing it would be pretty expensive. You still got to bore into solid rock in a mountain, but the maintenance would get nuts. They always say you can't afford a hyper car, which is a car over $1 million usually, if you can't buy 2. If you can only afford 1, don't buy 1 because you'll probably put another X into it in maintenance over the lifetime. And have you seen the price on private jets? Some of those things are $200 million. I mean, geez, people just don't have the money for that. You've got to be stupid rich. So that's out of the reach of pretty much everyone, but they are the most effective. Now, for everybody saying, oh, humans can't live in a bunker, it would never work for this, that, and whatever reason. Submarines. Now, depending upon the class, these submarines are multiple billions of dollars. So the nuclear ones that could run for 50 years. And because it's nuclear and they have so much fuel on board, they use the nuclear generator to generate electricity, which can do hydrolysis to the water to get oxygen out of it, and then they just get rid of the hydrogen or burn it or whatever they do. And then you barely even need CO2 scrubbers. You could just circulate, and it's a whole thing. It's practically a spaceship. It's just a bunker underwater, though. So it does work, but it's a heck of a lot harder to get to it underwater. You need another submarine. It's not that hard to get to your bunker, especially if people know where it is. And that is the problem with bunkers. They all have an enormous weakness. You have to be so stealthy, and if it's found out, I don't care how thick the door is. If people don't have enough fuel or the infrastructure to get a welder, an electric or fuel-based one, acetylene, I don't know, whatever, to eventually cut through the door over a day. Look at bank safes, look at bank vaults, like how long they say it takes to cut into them. Usually it's like a day or less. But if that infrastructure didn't exist, you're just sitting there and waiting to see what happens. So you're effectively putting yourself under siege. The only difference is people have to know where you are. But once they figure that out, you're sitting ducks. I mean, you're more like a sitting turtle because you're in a shell, but turtles have weaknesses too. You know what the eagles do? They pick them up and drop them. They drop them from a really high height, okay? Even they figured out, wow, that's a lot of defenses. Well, what can we do here, though? But forget the fact that any door is just, somebody's going to get through the door at some point, no matter how much steel and concrete you got. Ventilation. You seal that up, you're going orders of magnitude higher difficulty with mold. And I mean, just look at the space station. Look at how many issues they had with like weird molds and bacteria and like stuff growing places because it's 100% sealed, which means it has to be 100% clean, and humans aren't. So submarines, they got all kinds of cleaning regimens and chemicals and methods and disinfecting lights and all kinds of different tech over the last 50 years. But man, you seal that up, okay, cool. They still might get through the door. Get a jackhammer, but jackhammers usually require fuel or electricity. But if somebody knew where you were and it's been a week and they aren't dead. But most bunkers, I would almost say all of them. I don't know if I've ever heard of a fully sealed bunker that isn't military, which all the military ones pretty much are capable of doing that. They can't stay sealed forever, but ventilation holes. You could have all the filtration for every last little possible thing, every particle, some kind of mitigation for like nerve gases and dissolved stuff and fumes that would not normally be caught in any size filter. You could run through charcoal and all that, but every time you put a restriction, you need a more powerful fan or engine or turbine or whatever you're doing to maintain the pressure and get the air through whatever filtration you got. And spoiler alert, energy is the second problem. Now, of course, for this example, in case I didn't make it clear, the cheapest ones are useless, stupid, and a waste of money and never going to work. The mid-range ones, that's what you want to go for. And the most expensive possible ones are stupid because you can't afford them and you can't get to them. So we're just talking about, I built a bunker. Okay, it's 2,000 square feet. It's basically a second house underground and it's on my property. Well, you better hope your kids don't blab at school. And I mean, honestly, you're going to need a building permit. Somebody at the city's going to know and they're going to talk and it's going to make the news. And just trying to build a secret bunker, even if you do it yourself, people are going to start asking questions. There are some companies that'll keep it quiet and they'll do what they can do. But like I said, you need permits pretty much anywhere in America. Somebody's going to find out. They might classify it as a shed and then just make it a really high budget. But some of that would be kind of illegal. So if I tell you, hey, there's a bunker right there. There's 4 people in it and a bunch of supplies. We're running out of supplies. Let's break in. As immoral as that would be, I'm just giving you that scenario. With your knowledge of bunkers, with just what you've seen in movies, TV, or this video so far, what would you do? You would find the air vents, plug one, find the redundant one, whatever, find all of them. I don't care how well they're disguised, you could find them. And they typically aren't, 3,000 feet away because that's a lot of pressure to maintain. That's a lot of air to move. That's a lot of turbine energy to spin up. You could just listen, you could look, you could use thermal. There's all kinds of ways, if you had it, or you could just look around, just really carefully examine every square foot within a very small area. And it doesn't matter if you're looking for disturbed dirt in a big old pipe or like, oh, wow, that's camouflage or it's made to look like a rock or, but that's clearly a vent. You just get a couple of humans and you're like, well, it has to be somewhere. You will find the vents eventually. And then you plug them or put smoke down it or something worse, tear gas, I don't know. The problem with that is you still got to get through the door. So you got to hope that the people inside would be so uncomfortable from their burning eyes and barely able to breathe that they'd come out with their hands up. Otherwise, if they die inside, well, now you still got to get through that door. Which if you could do that, you'd probably do that in the first place, although letting them know you're coming, It's rather loud to break through the door. You can be stealthy if you're going to do an air attack. And then things are going to be a little biologically compromised if there's dead people inside. You ain't living in there. It's going to be very, very unpleasant and nearly impossible to get that back up to cleanliness standards to live there yourself. So that would just be, hey, we want what's in it. We want the food, And people who are starving and desperate or just in a gang and that deranged or just whatever, motivated people, they could come back day after day after day if you close the dampers and absolutely seal it off. So how does the military deal with this? One, the submarine's way underwater. Nobody can get to it. Nobody's diving down that low. 2, it can move around and they're really stealthy. And 3, for the above ground stuff, not just submarines, just like a military bunker, their plan of action is if somebody comes out, starts messing with the infrastructure, messing with, solar, wind, whatever you got for a little bit of energy up top just in case, the ventilation, you send people out with guns and armor to deal with them. So first of all, if you're going to do a bunker, don't, in case you haven't gotten the point of this video, unless you have a certain amount of money. There is a point where it makes sense. I'll kind of break that down. But you better have a full kit of like $3,000 worth of 3A plus body armor with plates. You can buy that. No joke. Go full body or full suit, whatever you want to call it, on eBay right now, about $2,000. Shoulder pads, legs, like the whole thing. Like you're the Juggernaut suit from Modern Warfare 3, okay? It's basically a bomb suit, but made for tactics, not for explosions. Or, you can just buy a bomb suit. And then some serious weapons and ammo. Now, here's the thing. Why don't you just buy that and skip the bunker? Why don't you just be above ground? And the answer is because somebody can throw a Molotov on the top of your house and just light the shingles on fire and your whole place burns down. Being underground does give you some defense, but your weak point is worse than a house, so why not just build a house? Why not just fortify your house? Why not just have active resistance, I guess you would say, active defenses, which is I'm going to run out and start, shooting. But, surprise, surprise, they might be hoping that you do that and have, 6 people waiting on the entrance with guns trained on it. So you're going to have a bad time. But smoke grenades, thermal, you get enough stuff, it would be a very unfair firefight, but not one, you don't want to walk into an ambush in a pinch point. That's just stupid. And if it has 2 ways out, I guarantee they found the second one when they were looking for the air vents. They say put it under 3-4 inches of dirt and then plant grass on top of it. And then just push really hard or have like an assisted tool thing where it would like move the stuff out of the way. You can get creative with some of that stuff. I've seen some things. It'd be easier to have automated defenses like turret guns on PTZ, which is pan, tilt, zoom, camera motors kind of. Drones with guns, most of that stuff is completely illegal in the US. So there's that, but you want to do a little DIY project with some tear gas and a drone. After the collapse, who's going to charge you, As we learned in Ukraine, a drone with a little grabby hand is not illegal. Grenades are and explosives are and DIY explosives are, but the intact government made them illegal. So if you were to, when they're not around anymore, combine them, I'm just saying. So I would look into that, the zero risk robot kind of thing. And drones are kind of hard to shoot down, actually. And that's why they did just gravity dropped grenades, because that's a lot easier. But you'd have to store them somewhere. You'd have to have a way to have them exit. You have to have multiple. So then that's just more budget. And how good are lithium batteries? And are they still good after you left them sitting there for 3 years? And, So weaknesses and the air routes and the filtration, let's leave that aside for a second. Let's talk about energy. So I looked into it, and I was completely wrong about this. So I found this very interesting. You guys have probably seen like the rural houses with just propane. Everything runs on propane. A lot of them I found have power, which really doesn't make a lot of sense because then just run everything off electric. But I guess some of them don't, and then they just run a propane generator, and that's their electricity. But they use it for cooking and heat normally. And they're kind of off-grid-ish. The propane cylinders, or the big tanks on the front lawn, are a really big thing, at least where I live. And I thought, okay, I've heard of 1,000. Apparently, way more typically, people get like a 250-gallon, because that's already 8 feet long. So that's like the typical tank you see is like 100 to 250 gallons of propane, which is not that much. But I heard that'll run your place for like, it really depends on usage and temperature and like how much you cook and that kind of stuff and how much electricity you use and laundry and all that. But 1 month to 6 months is just the general number I've seen. But then if you want, you could put in 1,000 gallon. That's like the biggest residential usually. And apparently 6 months to a year easily, even with high draw. That's surprising. Now, other people have said, oh, no, we've got like a fairly big property and we've got a 1,000 gallon and that we're refilling it every month to 2 months. In the winter, it's every month. Jeez. Most companies in America will go up to 325, 350 gallons, maybe 1,000. I've looked at multiple websites. 1,000 gallons seems to be the peak. However, I found for multi-tenant units, so like an off-grid remote apartment complex, I guess, which that can't be efficient. But then I thought, oh yeah, my friend used to do like welding on pipelines way, way up somewhere, and they would be 2 hours away from the hotel. So a lot of times, if it's big enough, or if it's this huge, ridiculous, like a diamond mine or something, they'll just build like an apartment building, basically. Because it's just cheaper than driving them back and forth when the drive time is multiple hours and the weather isn't good and the roads aren't good. And then there's the tanks that are actually at the refilling stations. So I found a place that'll sell you a 30,000 gallon tank, or 2 or 3 or 4. You're underground, the heating and cooling, you barely need any. Cooking, you keep that to a minimum. The water, you might not need to boil it, actually, with the right filtration. So you're actually not going to use that much energy. I mean, it just come down to electricity usage, and burning propane to generate electricity is not the most efficient thing in the world. I think I've heard from sheer chemical energy, if it was flawless compared to what it is, it's like 30% efficient. But still, a propane is a whole heck of a lot of energy. So if you just ran everything on propane, hopefully it doesn't leak or explode, and you had multiple tanks, and the tanks were underground, well then, you're pretty good on energy, actually. Now, you want to power CO2 scrubbers with hydrolysis? First of all, where are you going to get the water? But okay, it rains, you got a collection system, whatever, and hopefully nobody sabotages that. That is an insane amount of electricity. Like, I don't care how much propane you got. You are not splitting water with hydrolysis to make oxygen to breathe. That's just not going to happen. You'd run out of propane. Other than that, you could live for over a year. In a lot of bunkers, they say a year. You know, a year worth of food, plus some extras, a year worth of this, that, the other thing, a year worth of all that, just seal it up for a year. That's what the goal is. And the last topic is, how long would you stay down and how long should it be rated for? Like, what should you even shoot for? When should you come out? How would you know? But let's say, okay, propane, you wanted infinite energy, you wanted renewable. Well, you're probably not going to go cut down, firewood and burn it. That is very efficient. Sort of. You'd need some kind of weird like boiler generator thing, like some old school like 1890s tech or something. I don't know. But energy is energy, steam is steam. You could turn a turbine. Okay, whatever you build, okay, cool. You built your own little power plant, runs on wood. You would be out there 24/7. It would be your full-time job just cutting down firewood. And let me just remind you, you have to dry it. You can't just take green trees and burn green wood unless you really like creosote and a bunch of residue, the fire not burning hot enough and going out. And, firewood with a chimney, that's got to be about 5% efficient because all the heat just goes out the chimney. But that can heat a house for if you had a pile of wood the size of a house, it would be about one winter is what I've been told. Sometimes it's not quite that drastic, but it depends about how well insulated your house is. But just from an energy scale, I wanted to give those examples to say that you're not running your bunker on wood. And if you are, you better have a lumber mill up top, which would be kind of visible, loud, and not very stealthy. Kind of hard to hide. You wouldn't really put a camo tarp over that and nobody sees it. So what other fuel? Well, obviously solar panels. You could get 10,000 watts worth of a solar panel array, but boy, somebody comes across that and you wouldn't really want to hide it. I mean, a big old fence or a big old brick wall around it. I wonder what's in there. That's kind of weird. Trying to camouflage it, good luck. Anybody higher than it would see it because you've got to have the sunlight hit it. So you can't cover it. You can't put anything tall next to it to an extent. Wind turbines got to be way up there to get any kind of wind because the ground stuff is just way too inconsistent and weird. And then you need batteries. So not only would it be a massive OPSEC stealth issue, but it would also be an issue for theft chance and just visibility. Noise would be nothing. Okay, I'll give you that. But you might as well be broadcasting, hey, here I am. And if you're far enough out in the middle of nowhere that nobody sees your solar panels, then why don't you just not have a bunker? Because nobody's coming by. They ain't going to see your hut or your cabin in the woods either, and that's way cheaper. Spend the rest on defenses and hunting stuff and guns, armor, drones, night vision. And then, no matter what batteries you're going to get, they're going to wear out in a couple years. There is no battery chemistry that can run longer than even, I'd say, 10. That's really stretching it. Like lithium polymer or lithium iron phosphate. That would probably be a little bit better. With full climate control, brand new top of the line BMSs, you'd be very lucky to get 10 years out of it. I think 5 to 7 would be more realistic. Now, the whole thing with lithium is the only reason we use it is because it's light and portable. And they're finding out that with all the renewables and stuff they're rolling out on the grid that it's not very reliable because they don't have the battery storage. If the wind stops blowing or the sun stops going or somebody just needs a lot of electricity at night, you're in trouble. If it's cloudy for a week, you're in trouble. But they don't need to move those batteries around. So why are we using lithium? That's just stupid. But lead acid, very inefficient. It's very temperature sensitive. So they're working on stuff with like beryllium. And I mean, every week there's a new miracle battery, and they're all vaporware nonsense, just trying to get patents and investment money and grant money at the colleges. You know, I'm sure they're very, very exaggerated, but some of the proof of concept stuff is interesting. It's pretty good. So if you had good enough batteries, they're saying they got batteries that could last like 10 to 50 years. I'm thinking, okay, now we're talking with very little loss, very little, the latest one from like this week is they put crystals in the anode, I think, instead of some kind of metal because of the microfractures that form in it. And they're saying something like they've been having a demo running and recharging for 6 years straight, and it's still going. And so they estimate that it could do 20,000 charge cycles, full bottom to top. And then it's still lithium. It's just a better crystalline anode that's like just as tough as a diamond just about. And it works, but I don't know what kind of resistance that would be. Crystals don't conduct electricity, FYI. Usually they hide and it can only do 1/100th of an amp. Whoops. Give us grant money, give us investment money, buy my patent. The venture capital meeting is on Thursday and we're having a sub tray. All right, we got Italian and roast beef coming, just saying. But I think 5 years from now, we might have some batteries that would make it look better as far as an off-grid option, but still for a bunker. If the whole point is we're underground and you can't get to us, and you're trying to be stealthy or trying to be ultra defensive, well, there's no sunshine underground and there's no wind either. And if you say, hey, we're going to have all the humans pedal on bikes and the bikes are going to have alternators and they're going to generate the electricity, one, a human can perpetually output like 100 to 170 watts. And two, you're running on food. It would be less efficient to just light your Doritos on fire and use the heat to run a generator because the human body is like shockingly efficient with food. But it would be unpleasant. You'd go through more water and, let's just touch on water. Okay, 3 1,000-gallon cisterns. Cool. That's about enough for a year plus. And you could filter it, and you're good. Hopefully it doesn't leak. Multiple lines, redundant stuff. Turn it on and off. Yeehaw. Water's actually not that big of an issue. And if you had like a rain collector, cool. But then somebody could just drop like poison in it. But if you had crazy enough filtering, like reverse osmosis is going to run out of salt at some point. But you could have like a room full of salt. That would be like a 10-year supply. So as long as you can get 1+ year or even 5 to 10 years, I think you're like good. So, okay. Enough thousands of gallons of propane. You got energy, heat, electricity, water. Okay, seal it up, treat it, do it right. You're good. People do that. That's a thing. I mean, people in California put 1,000-gallon things or multiple 100-gallon things underground just to collect rainwater the somewhat legal way and then water the garden with it so that they don't get metered and all that. And they do work. And there are just, simple chemicals and stuff you can do to keep them stable. And it's not even that expensive. So water we're good on. Food, obviously, come on. I mean, you could get 500 square feet, 8 feet tall. If you were to pack that with nothing but packs of food on shelves, that is somewhere around 4 million calories. If it was just rice, oatmeal, pinto beans, soy sauce, salt, sugar, and a couple others like coconut oil, honey, and all of those have a shelf life of 30 years to eternity. So food, water, power, we could do it. And I was actually surprised by that. I thought, no, you're going to run out in a week, within a reasonable budget. And then I did the numbers. I looked at like propane usage numbers and tank sizes and all that. You can get a 30,000-gallon tank of propane. Because I mentioned that. That's like the commercial refiller kind of thing, or for like large buildings. I found multiple contractors that will put one in. I mean, 30,000 gallons is years. So I thought, okay, what would you run out of? The electronics inside eventually breaking, but I mean, how long does the phone you're currently using, how long has that been running? If you've got a properly built commercial grade laptop, something just medium quality, you could get, I hate when people measure them in years because that's not how you measure them. You could get about 10,000 operational hours out of the average laptop before a fan or a battery breaks or something funny happens with the screen or, general electrical failure and that kind of stuff. Desktop computer, double it or triple it if I built it. And divide it by 10 if Dell or HP built it. Spare parts, very lightweight, very small. Lightweight and small, bunker, limited size. I don't need to really go into that. Copper wiring in the walls. I mean, how long does the wiring in your walls in your house last? The steel, seal it. Concrete, 100 years, 200 years. I'm struggling to find anything that would really be a problem quickly except for the air supply. The filters. If you got a whole room full of MERV 13s, Cool, you're going to need more than that, but your charcoal will get saturated with poisonous stuff, with whatever, with radioactive dust, with, so the air supply is the number one thing that will become a problem the quickest. Not water, not energy, air supply. And that is fascinating to me, but that's the conclusion I came to after hours of research. So with a very large amount of filters and some replaceable stuff, you're still probably looking a couple months to a couple years tops, depending upon the size of your bunker, the equipment, and all that stuff. And then I would be worried about the turbines running 24/7. Because HVAC turbines like to break. I mean, you're underground, it's fairly static temperature, nothing too exciting happening. I would say probably breaking down a little bit less than a building, but a lot of people turn theirs off once in a while, which you wouldn't be able to do that because the CO2 would just sit. So air is an issue. It really, really is. But you don't have to filter 100% all the time if you've got a couple little gadgets up there that are sensors that check for radiation and, particle and this and that. And you don't have to build the Mars rover. You can just build a basic little weather station. I bet you a couple $100 up to a couple thousand would get you like this ridiculous sensor array. And then have a couple redundant ones built onto drones and just a couple redundant like routers and stuff and Wi-Fi and all centralized networks. You're good. And then if it's all clear, you disengage the filters and put it in bypass mode and breathe fresh air. Which is not a good idea because it's a bunch of mold spores and stuff from the outside. I'd rather have a very surgically clean area. But like I said, if you run out of air, run out of filters, well, great. So just have a way to clean it. Cleaning chemicals was the second thing that I thought would become a problem. You could only store so much bleach and chlorine and stuff to start killing mold and bacteria and all that stuff and mildew. The shower, whatever that is, would get kind of nasty. I mean, the drains, you name it, you gotta sanitize it eventually. Powdered bleach, though, 50 gallons of powdered bleach can make a lot of gallons of liquid bleach, I found out. But bleach likes to eat away at metal, so you'd have to go all plastic, PVC, vinyl, that kind of stuff. But you could do it. You could build it like a surgical thing or like a chemical lab. So if you did it right, it's still air. So I guess that would be the thing that I settled on as far as all factors considered. But if there's something I haven't thought of, let me know down in the comments section. But how long should you need to stay down there? People have said, radioactive decay, that would be 48 hours to 7 days. If a normal fission bomb went off, and if it was a fusion bomb, you could go out after a minute. I mean, those inherently aren't really radioactive. It's a little more complicated than that, but you're looking for cesium and stuff, but that's okay, it might soak into your bones, give you cancer over time, but it won't cause radiation burns and you just die of organ failure if you breathe it in for 30 minutes, So after a nuke, 48 hours to 7 days is the typical safe zone. That's the half-life of the stuff that goes really, really, really quick. A virus? I mean, years. Look at COVID, but COVID had a really low death rate. If it had a really high death rate, people would really be locking down, but that would actually slow the spread and it wouldn't really go away. And then how would they really distribute vaccines if infrastructure collapsed? And I don't know. And alien invasion, well, you're just screwed. I don't think your bunkers, it's just going to buy you time and you'll be sitting there with your own thoughts knowing that the inevitable is coming. That sounds like fun. I'd rather just die. In fact, I'm a guy. I'd rather die fighting the aliens. But since aliens don't exist, let's talk about some kind of weird zombie, rabies, virus, mind control, madness, crazy attack everyone, kind of thing. Not as realistic as the movies, but still realistic. I mean, we have rabies. That's a thing right now. It makes any mammal act crazy as heck, and then it makes them averse to the sight and thought of water. That's just weird. Rabies, if you look into it, it seems like a sci-fi movie thing. So let's say that, okay, you're looking as long as possible. And that's why I thought, okay, it's not always nukes. And if it was nukes and they went off in the northern hemisphere during not winter, you aren't going to like what you see when you come up because everything will burn. We fight forest fires so efficiently that there hasn't been one that just wipes out a whole portion of the country in centuries, I would dare say. And they weren't that big back then because they were more frequent. They just wouldn't have the dry trees. It wouldn't have regrown in that time. Everybody wonders how America didn't just burn down in the past in its entirety, wipe out all the Native Americans. Is because forest fires weren't that big because they would just stop because we didn't have kindling every decade piling up, and then nothing burning it down because we stop it every time. And that's why they're becoming more and more stoppable. So in the winter, the snow is going to put out the nuclear, the heat from the nuclear, and nothing will light on fire. So next time you're struggling to start a campfire with wood in a snowy environment because you saw it on YouTube and it looked really easy, even though everybody doing that is faking their videos, or at least creatively editing it, let's put it that way. Well, tell your significant other, your kids, your spouse, well, even a nuke wouldn't light this on fire. They did studies. It's true that you could cite the exact studies. In the summer, everything's going to burn. The air wouldn't even be breathable. What would that do to the atmosphere with all the sulfur compounds? Oh my gosh, it wouldn't get up into the stratosphere. We found that out during the first desert storm and the Kuwaiti oil wells getting lit on fire. People thought that much black crazy stuff would get up into some ionosphere or whatever. It didn't. And so it didn't cause massive global cooling collapse and, nuclear winter basically without the nuke. But they also found nukes probably wouldn't either. But they might lift it enough, but then the resulting fires, well, then the lift wouldn't be there. So I think they said there's a 99% chance or higher that a nuke wouldn't actually cause nuclear winter. I am completely summarizing a video that I entirely did on would a nuke cause nuclear winter. So go check that out on my channel if you're interested. However, we're going to have some breathability issues if all the green and brown stuff burns in a forest fire in America, or most of it. It's going to do funny things to the ozone, potentially. Like, it's just, you can't have that happen to the ecosystem and still go grow some corn and some potatoes. The soil is all going to collapse. It's just going to be a nightmare. So just because you're good with the nuke after 48 hours doesn't mean you're good with the nuke after 48 years, you know what I mean? Let alone 48 months. So when do you come up? Well, hate to give you the scenario, but if it's nukes, never. Or don't even build a bunker, don't even bother. Like, it's... Ugh. Now, rioting, civil unrest, absolute collapse of the country. What's the difference? Everybody's done different die-off projection numbers, and they're so different from each other. They say X% in the first 30 days, but then they forget about just how much food we have around. But then you got the people who would hoard it and take it, and that would be the most aggressive, immoral people. So nobody nice is going to be left. It'll kind of be like The Walking Dead. We got a couple people who survive because they're smart, nice, and work together, and then the rest are just thugs, criminals, and people willing to do anything to survive, because if they are and someone else isn't, then they lasted longer because they took that guy's stuff. Not very psychologically complicated to track that one just numerically. Or, well, logically, but people are saying, oh, we'd have food for years because this many people would shoot each other. Well, the cities would be different than the rural, and, well, how long would it take them to get out here? So it's somewhere between, half the population dead within 2 weeks to still people running around shooting each other on site trying to get resources on year 5. So the answer to that one was just civil unrest, complete and utter collapse. I mean, then other countries coming in. Was it the whole world, or like what triggered this? But I mean, 30 days ain't enough. Generally, the number is more than 30 days. So your bunker shouldn't just be we could just stay down in this little 300 square foot, whatever, and just sleep down there for a couple days, and then the nuclear stuff fades and we're good. Not only is that realistic, although budget-wise, hey, yeah, sure. Just sleep in one shipping container with one basic vent that does nothing, some furnace filters, and a little propane thing with a vent. You're basically just camping underground, a couple cots and some, food supplies that'll last 2 weeks. And then some kind of toilet thing, which actually that was the other one. I mean, there's ways that you can do leach fields and stuff, and that would basically be forever, which is why I barely even mentioned it. But in a smaller place, you're going to have a bad time. But let's say you just did that. People are like, oh, you don't need bigger than that. We're going to live down there for a year? No, if it's longer than a year, I'm coming up and fighting. Yes, you are, according to most projections. So how long do you have to stay down there? I mean, realistically, the worst one would be just a people-based thing, just people fighting over resources, and eventually it just hits the breaking point where people just break in, loot everything. There are no more stores, there's no more semi-trucks, there's no more shipments, no more distribution centers. It all just falls apart, mostly in the cities, but, well, without the people running the companies in the big cities, how are you going to get stuff where you're at? Then it comes down to, when would you even go in the bunker? When you saw people coming, well, then they better not see you go in or know where it is, or torture someone else to find their location if you told your neighbors, or, better hope they don't have a vague idea of where it is, or see some disturbed dirts or footprints or gravel or heat or steam or smoke coming out. But if it's enough people that can't fight, okay, cool. I'd wait for them to occupy the place, take all the resources and leave, which I think would be a couple weeks. In a 1,000-person city or something, I could see that. The problem with occupying is they'd constantly get ambushed, and they got to sleep sometimes, so they'd have guards and stuff. And it really comes down to who's got the best gear, guns, and tactics. Both. And if they're still alive after a couple months, they probably have at least okay tactics. Or they recruited so many people on the way that they just kept their numbers at 50 or whatever, and that's a good number for them, and they know it, and they've got a ex-military tactician, former criminal, whatever, leading them. But before I write the entire movie, yeah, I think that's, in that scenario, several weeks. Otherwise, like I said, nuclear, 48 to 7 hours and come out. Because it's all going to burn anyway. And then go back in and rely on the filtration or just have gas masks because they're way cheaper than bunkers, and forage for food and, eat your stores last instead of first. Crack open the MREs and the Mylar packed rice last. Go shoot a deer in the woods first because that's just logical. And get your energy from cutting down trees and just a chimney and all that stuff in a normal house. But then it comes down to, well, why not just have absolute tactical superiority? Now, numbers, tactics, sieges, like motivation level, hard target versus soft, that could be a whole video. But let me just say, what's the last thing you ever want to come across in a really dangerous grid down, full collapse scenario 6 months after it happens, and you're just wandering the woods and wandering around, nomadic, looking for people, communities, resources, and a sign of civilization? People in rifle grade full armor with night vision and drones and smoke grenades and thermal and 1,000-yard scopes and tons of ammo. That would be a nightmare. You could have the jump on them, a full ambush, and they'll still get you. I mean, I guess if they're standing still and you get them in the neck, that's usually where the armor isn't, and most people don't walk around in 110 pounds of armor. But besides lucky shots, and then how many are there versus how many are there of you, and, it's a whole thing. The last people I'd ever want to come across is like that. Like military special forces level stuff. So why don't you just skip the bunker and buy all that? If you got the budget for it, just do that. I would say buy that first. A bunker is basically the absolute dead last thing I would ever possibly buy before like a $20,000 renewable energy system, bare minimum, if not $100,000. Solar, wind, batteries, multiple inverters, like redundant everything, take that thing up to $100K. Still cheaper than a bunker usually. An above ground water filtration system, an above ground set of bulletproof windows and reinforced this and that, empty sandbags plus a pile of sand. That's actually really cheap. Above ground surveillance and cameras and batteries and battery walls and weapons, armor. Night vision, intel, like I said, overhead drones with thermal and night vision. It ain't cheap, but it's cheaper than a bunker, and I think you'll get more out of it. Because the bunkers, you can stay down there for a long time, but they all have weaknesses, and the weakness is somebody finds out where it is, and if it's right next to your house, they might put 2 and 2 together. So if you're going to build one, and it is seal-upable, and it's rated for like a month because you're like, well, that's way over nuclear, we're good. But really, it'll just be a defensive point, so you're kind of building like a castle underground. I would put that, we'll just say $200,000 that you put into the bunker, put that into your house. Make bulletproof walls. Like you could get all this stuff, steel plating in the walls, Really, really, really good cameras with like bulletproof lenses, PTZ domes. I mean, look into the stuff you can do. Like you could turn your house into the White House, and somebody would have to be very motivated when they could just go to another house anywhere else. You know what I mean? Well, that's assuming you don't live in an apartment or a city, and there's all kinds of factors. And if you live in an apartment, you're probably not building a bunker because you still have to get there. And if it's even 3 roads over, yeah, good luck. In any kind of scenario, you better be able to go on foot. And then someone's going to see you because everybody's out walking around and in the roads and honking at each other and getting out of their car. And then if it was a biological thing, like I said, you got that kind of gear, you got a really crazy like $3,000 go bag basically with like top of the line everything, cold weather, hot weather, energy stuff, crazy density lithium batteries and redundant cell phones, GPS, communication radios, all real lightweight, basic solar panels to charge it all, like one big one, foldable. But like you got a couple people, you got like specialist stuff in their backpacks and then a kit and y'all go together. Oh boy, or like a sled you pull behind you, something like that. A basic like a wagon or, you could get crazy with your portable command center basically. You can't catch the flu out in the middle of the woods. So instead of hiding a bunker, hide literally anywhere. Just be away from people. You don't need 2 feet of dirt and concrete. You need 50 feet of open air. Unless the rabies zombies are going to get you. So there are these fringe scenarios where it would be good to have a bunker, but I'd just rather have everything else. Like, are they going to ambush us if we're wearing all this crazy stuff and armor? No. They're going to hide from us. I don't care who they are. A group of 100 really desperate armed people maybe, but boy, they're going to get some losses. That's still, they'd attack anybody other than you if you look a certain way with a certain level of gear, a certain bunch of type of guns. You're wearing the right helmet with the right goggles. A lot of people know, don't mess with that. If you set up a defensive perimeter, firing zones, and a couple maybe even polite little warning signs, hey, this is bulletproof, we got this many people, we're all ex-military, doesn't matter if it's true or not or if it's exaggerated. They're just like, hey, that seems like a great host to attack. Maybe we'll only lose 80% of our numbers. Nope. If you're roaming around for resources and just something to do, the whole point is stay alive, and that doesn't look like a good way to stay alive. So just fortify your house, fortify your basement, turn your basement into a bunker. I don't really have time to cover that, but like a basic filtration system, some plastic sheeting and duct tape for the stairs, and then just like triple pane windows with a couple little extra this, that, and the other thing. You're good to go. You can actually survive in just a basement against almost any nuke that didn't explode real close to you. And even then, blast windows or no windows. Simple. A basic little air recycler and a window unit filter with airlock. I mean, like, this is cheap stuff. So at the end of the day, are bunkers worth it for all the different reasons and all the different details that I think I gave in this video? I think anybody can probably come to the conclusion that no, but if you had $100 million, maybe throw $1 million at it. I think that's the way I would put it. If it was literally 1% of my budget, I would build it. If it was 10% of my budget, I wouldn't even consider it, not for 1 second. Not worth the money. 10% of my net worth or my total income from a one-time event like winning lottery, 10's too high. Although 10% of like $1 billion, I mean, like a CEO maybe. I mean, but well, no, you'd have to be owner. You'd have to be primary stakeholder or a shareholder, I should say, in like a company. Even CEOs, 20, 30 million a year is considered high, and that's not enough to build a bunker reasonably. Most of them make, 1 to 2 million. I just don't see it. You'd have to have who cares money. If you got who cares money, get a bunch of crazy vehicles. I mean, just the movability of them. Set up a biodiesel plant. Like, I could think of so many other things I'd buy that, like I said, it would be the last thing on my shopping list at basically any amount of money that's remotely attainable. And even past that. So if you found this video interesting, leave a like and subscribe. If there's any other factors or interesting things or questions, leave them down in the comments section. I appreciate you watching, and I'll see you guys next time.